The San Miguel Mission is the oldest church in the United States. It was built between 1605 and 1608 by the Franciscan missionaries, only in Santa Fe. Adobe Architecture is synonymous with Santa Fe. Referred to as Spanish Pueblo Revival style architecture, it has become very expensive now to have an adobe house in Santa Fe. It takes approximately 3,500 adobe bricks to build a 1,400 square foot house. But today, most people don't live in small houses. They want to have a large house, and with internet connections and electricity and all the different things, what was once poor man's housing has become very expensive. So today in Santa Fe, only the very rich can afford to live in mud huts. The Basilica Cathedral of St. Francis of Assisi is a Romanesque style European cathedral. It is in complete contrast to any of the surrounding architecture. The Scottish Rite Masonic Temple was built in 1912. It is the only building in the United States that was built to resemble the Alhambra in Granada, Spain. In 1912, New Mexico became the 47th state in the Union. You'll notice the U.S. flag on the side of the building of the Scottish Rite Masonic Temple. In Santa Fe's history, 4 flags have flown over the plaza. We had the Spanish flag from about 1610 to 1821, followed by Mexico, 1821 to 1846. Then the U.S. came in, and we've had the American flag ever since. But believe it or not, in March of 1862, the Confederate flag flew over the plaza for 3 weeks. The New Mexico State Legislative Building is the only building in the United States that was built to resemble a Native American symbol. The circular building is built to resemble the Zia symbol, which also is on our New Mexico state flag. The Exchange Hotel has been some type of lodging on the corner of the plaza since the 17th century. It is currently called the La Fonda Hotel. It's been called the U.S. Hotel, the Inn of La Fonda, and again, right now, it is the La Fonda Hotel. It is the quintessential hotel in Santa Fe. 4 major routes have come through Santa Fe during its history. Route 66 prior to 1937, which started in Chicago and ended in Santa Monica. The Camino Real, which starts in Mexico City, is a 1,500-mile trade route that ends 30 miles north of Santa Fe near Owinge. The Spanish Trail started in 1829 in northern New Mexico, came through Santa Fe, and ended in Los Angeles. And the Santa Fe Trail began in 1821 in Franklin, Missouri, and ended right on the Santa Fe Plaza. Edgar Lee Hewitt was an anthropologist who came to Santa Fe in the 1880s. He did 3 very important things during his time here. In 1909, he founded and built the New Museum of New Mexico. In 1907, he founded the School of American Archaeology, which today is called the School of Advanced Research. And the most important thing he did in 1906, he was out doing an excavation or something at Chaco Canyon, and he noticed that that the ruins had been pillaged, that they had been looted. So from Santa Fe in 1906, he petitioned the U.S. Congress to start the American Antiquities Act, which makes it illegal to pillage or desecrate national heritage sites. And he did that from Santa Fe in 1906. Edgar Lee Hewitt also hired in 1907 a young anthropologist by the name of Sylvanus Morley. He had a very colorful life, and it is said that during the Cold War, he was actually a spy for the Russians. Here he is when he rediscovered at the Yucatan Peninsula the Chichen Itza, and that became a National Heritage Site because he was the one who had actually come upon it by accident. Sylvanus Morley, his life is based on the fictional character Indiana Jones, only in Santa Fe. George Haye, the portly gentleman pictured in this photo on Palace Avenue in 1907 in Santa Fe, often visited Santa Fe looking for American Indian artifacts. He was a huge collector of anything Native American, so much so that he started a huge museum in New York dedicated to the American Indian. Today, it is part of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., and has over 1 million Native American artifacts, only in Santa Fe. The Santa Fe Opera was founded in Santa Fe in 1956. It has become a world-renowned opera comparable to the Metropolitan Opera in New York or La Scala in Milan. More than 24 world premieres have taken place at the Santa Fe Opera. John Crosby, seen here on the left, was the founder of the Santa Fe Opera. Seated next to him is Igor Stravinsky, who is considered one of the greatest composers of the 20th century. For the premiere season of the Santa Fe Opera in 1957, Stravinsky's opera The Rake's Progress was performed at the opera, and for 5 consecutive years his work was featured. There is a terrace called the Stravinsky Terrace located today at the Santa Fe Opera. The Santa Fe Playhouse, built in 1922, is the longest continually operated theater west of the Mississippi. Georgia O'Keeffe first came to Santa Fe in 1929. She came for a second visit in 1940 and moved to New Mexico permanently in 1946 after the death of her husband, Alfred Stieglitz. The Georgia O'Keeffe Museum opened in 1997. It is the most widely visited museum in New Mexico, and it is the only museum in the world, the only major museum in the world named for a woman, any woman. Now, there is a Frida Kahlo museum in Mexico City, but that is her home, so it's more of a tribute to Frida Kahlo. But the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum here in Santa Fe is a bona fide museum which frequently changes out exhibits and features other artists' work in addition to Georgia O'Keeffe, only in Santa Fe. Lew Wallace was the governor of New Mexico from 1878 to 1881. During his tenure as governor, he moonlighted as a writer, and in 1880 he published Ben-Hur, which is considered the greatest Christian novel of the 19th century. Willa Cather wrote Death Comes for the Archbishop in Santa Fe in 1927. It is considered by the Modern Library Association as one of the best English language novels of the 20th century. She wrote the book while living at La Fonda Hotel. Oliver Lafarge was awarded a Pulitzer Prize in 1929 for his book Laughing Boy about Native American life. It was later made into a movie. Lafarge was a descendant of Benjamin Franklin, only in Santa Fe. A Brave New World was written by Aldous Huxley in 1935. It is a science fiction novel that is based in the year 2540, and part of the plot takes place in Santa Fe when a spaceship lands in Santa Fe and the Martians are greeted by Native Americans on the Santa Fe Plaza, only in Santa Fe. La Conquistadora is the oldest Madonna in the United States. She came to Santa Fe in 1625. In 1680, she was rescued from a burning church during the Pueblo Revolt, and she went with the Spaniards in exile to El Paso del Norte, which was then part of Mexico, which today is El Paso, Texas. She returned in 1692 with the Spaniards, and everything was hunky-dory for the next 2 centuries. In 1974, she was kidnapped from the Basilica Cathedral of St. Francis of Assisi. The entire city of Santa Fe came to a complete standstill. The FBI was called in. It was very traumatic. They later found out that it was a couple of high school boys who had, it was kind of a hoax, and they returned La Conquistadora. But today, there's no way you can steal her. She's got all kinds of security in her private chapel located at the Basilica Cathedral of St. Francis of Assisi. Sister Catherine Drexel opened St. Catherine's Indian School in Santa Fe in 1895. She died in 1955. In the year 2000, Pope John Paul II canonized her as a saint. She is the second-born American saint, followed by Elizabeth Seton, only in Santa Fe. Buddhism came to Santa Fe in 1942 with the Japanese internment camp. In this photo taken at the Japanese internment camp, the gentlemen in the black robes are all Buddhist ministers. The Dalai Lama has come to Santa Fe on several occasions where he has established a strong Mahayana Buddhist presence. The Mahabodhi Stupa is the first stupa to have been built in 1973 in North America. The Dalai Lama visits with Yogi Bhajan of the Sikh religion in Santa Fe in the 1980s, only in Santa Fe. Also in 1942, the I Am Religion came to Santa Fe, founded by Guy and Edna Ballard. It was an American-born sect, and it was also one of the first New Age religions in this country. Rabbi Leonard Hellman was Santa Fe's first permanent rabbi. He came to Santa Fe in the 1970s, and when he died in 2013, he requested that his funeral be held at the Basilica Cathedral of St. Francis of Assisi. Only in Santa Fe would a Jewish rabbi request a funeral at a Catholic cathedral. Of the 19 founding families of Santa Fe, 11 were thought to be the crypto-Jews, the hidden Jews who were expelled from Spain, who practiced their Judaism in private while pretending to be Catholics. Donya Tules, one of the most widely written about women in New Mexican history, ran a brothel and gambling establishment in Santa Fe near the plaza. When she died in 1852, she requested that she be buried underneath the cathedral along with the clergy, only in Santa Fe. Albina Lucero became the first female deputy sheriff of Santa Fe in 1926. In addition to being a sheriff, she was a midwife and a bootlegger. So she could come to your house, deliver your wife's baby, deliver your booze, and if you were unruly, she could arrest you and take you to jail. Only in Santa Fe. Amalia Sanchez was Santa Fe's first fiesta queen in 1927. She was born in 1894 and lived through 3 centuries, dying in the year 2003 at the age of 109. She was also friends with Sister Catherine Drexel in the 1940s, so she actually was friends with a bona fide saint, only in Santa Fe. Billy the Kid first came to Santa Fe when he was 14 years of age, when his mother was getting married for the second time at the First Presbyterian Church. This was long before he became an outlaw, only in Santa Fe. The dawn of the atomic age took place here in Santa Fe with the Manhattan Project. At 109 East Palace, everyone had to sign in. It was a military checkpoint. So whether you were a nuclear physicist in the military or had some type of an office job, everybody had to sign in at 109 East Palace prior to going up to the Hill, which is now called Los Alamos, to work on the atomic bomb. The Castille Bridge, just off the Santa Fe Plaza, was the meeting place where espionage took place during the Cold War. It was there that nuclear physicist Klaus Fuchs worked directly with Harry Gould, where they exchanged information. With Ethel and Julius Rosenberg, who were later executed for treason. Sosobro was created by Will Schuster in 1926. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, it is the largest marionette in the world, only in Santa Fe. The Reverend Robert Palladino was a Trappist monk and a calligrapher who taught at Reed College in Portland, Oregon in 1972. One of his students was Steve Jobs. Later, he became a mentor to Jobs. The serif and the sans serif typefaces on the Apple computer were created by Robert Palladino. And why is Robert Palladino an only in Santa Fe? His grandfather, Gaetano Palladino, was an Italian stonemason who helped build the Basilica Cathedral of St. Francis of Assisi. Everyone is familiar with the @ symbol, which connects our email on the computer. The symbol itself is called an arroba. It is a Spanish word of Arabic origin. It is a form of measurement. Anybody who was born in the 1950s or 60s, they would remember as a child going to the supermarket with their parents, and in the produce department, they would give you the price of something, and this @ symbol was used back then. And why is this symbol an only in Santa Fe? Well, St. Augustine, Florida was the first Spanish settlement in the country in 1565. However, it only was part of the Spanish Empire for about a decade, and then it was taken over by the French. But in Santa Fe, we are the oldest continuous Spanish settlement. For over 230 years, Spanish was the only language spoken. So the @ symbol, the arroba symbol, is directly tied to Santa Fe and is only in Santa Fe for that very reason.
I want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about the fascinating history of my hometown, Santa Fe, New Mexico.